The red dust of Mars swirled outside the small, dome-shaped research station. Inside, the air was cold and sterile, filled with the hum of machines and the faint beeping of monitors. A team of scientists worked tirelessly, their faces lit by the glow of screens. The station, known as Outpost Alpha, was the most advanced facility on the planet, built to study the mysteries of the universe. But tonight, something was different. Dr. Elena Carter, the lead scientist, leaned over a console, her eyes scanning lines of data. Her team had been tracking a strange signal for hours. At first, they thought it was interference, a glitch in their equipment. But the signal kept coming strong and clear, repeating in a pattern that defied explanation. "This isn't natural," Elena muttered, her voice tense. She adjusted her headset and turned to her colleague, Dr. Raj Patel, who was analyzing the signal's frequency. "Raj, what do you make of this?" Raj frowned, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "It's not random. The pattern is too precise. It's almost like a message." The room fell silent. A message? From where? Mars was millions of miles from Earth, and the signal wasn't coming from any known human source. The team exchanged uneasy glances. This was the kind of discovery they had dreamed of, but now that it was here, it felt unnerving. Elena took a deep breath. "Let's not jump to conclusions. We need to analyze this carefully. If this is what we think it is..." She trailed off, not wanting to say the words aloud. "Aliens." The team worked through the night, decoding the signal. It was a slow process, but every piece of data they uncovered made the mystery deeper. The signal wasn't just a random pattern. It contained mathematical sequences, prime numbers, and what appeared to be coordinates. "Coordinates?" Elena whispered, staring at the screen. "To where?" Raj pulled up a star map and entered the coordinates. The screen zoomed in on a distant star system, one that had never been explored. "It's in the Orion Arm," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "But what's out there?" Before anyone could answer, the console beeped loudly. A new line of data appeared on the screen, flashing in bright red letters. "Origin. Unknown. Message. Warning." The room went still. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. A warning? From whom? And about what? "We need to report this to Earth," she said, reaching for the comms device. But as she did, the lights in the station flickered. The machines whirred loudly, and the signal on the screen grew stronger, almost overwhelming the system. "What's happening?" one of the scientists shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "I don't know," Elena replied, her hands flying over the controls. "The signal, it's getting stronger. It's like it's reacting to us." Suddenly, the screens went black. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then a single line of text appeared, glowing ominously in the dark. "Prepare." The scientists stared at the screen, their faces pale. Prepare for what? The signal had gone silent, but the word lingered, filling the room with a sense of dread. Elena took a shaky breath. "We need to figure out what this means. If this is a warning, we have to know what's coming." As the team scrambled to gather more data, the red dust outside continued to swirl, hiding the secrets of the universe. But one thing was clear. This was no ordinary discovery. Whatever was out there, it was watching, and it had just sent humanity a message. The screen flickered again, and the word "prepare" disappeared, replaced by a countdown. 72 o'clock. 00. Elena's eyes widened. A countdown? To what? No one had an answer, but one thing was certain. The clock was ticking, and the future of humanity hung in the balance. Deep beneath the icy surface of Antarctica, a massive underground facility buzzed with activity. Known as Project Deep Earth, the facility was one of the most secretive places on the planet. Its purpose? To study anomalies that defied explanation. And tonight, they had something extraordinary. Dr. Marcus Lee, the head of the project, stood in front of a massive, glowing artifact. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. A smooth metallic structure covered in intricate symbols that pulsed with a faint blue light. The artifact had been discovered buried under miles of ice, perfectly preserved, as if it had been waiting for someone to find it. "This changes everything," Marcus whispered, his breath visible in the cold air. He adjusted his glasses and leaned closer, studying the symbols. They matched the signal from Mars perfectly. The team had been working around the clock since the artifact arrived. Every test they ran only deepened the mystery. The material was unidentifiable, stronger than any metal on Earth, yet lightweight and seemingly indestructible. The symbols, when analyzed, appeared to be a form of advanced mathematics, possibly a language. "Dr. Lee, you need to see this," called Dr. Sarah Bennett, one of the lead researchers. She stood at a console, her eyes wide with excitement. We've managed to activate part of the artifact. Marcus hurried over, his heart racing. The artifact had been dormant since its discovery, but now a section of it was glowing brighter than ever. The symbols shifted and rearranged themselves, forming a new pattern. "What is it doing?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think it's responding to us," Sarah replied. She pointed to the screen where lines of data were streaming in. "It's projecting something." The team gathered around as the artifact emitted a beam of light, creating a holographic image in the center of the room. It was a map, a detailed three-dimensional map of the galaxy. A single star system was highlighted, pulsing with a golden light. "That's the same system from the Mars signal," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "But why is it showing us this?" Before anyone could answer, the artifact began to hum, a low, resonant sound that vibrated through the room. The ground beneath their feet shook, and the lights flickered. "What's happening?" Sarah shouted, gripping the console for balance. "I don't know," Marcus replied, his eyes fixed on the artifact. "It's like it's waking up." The holographic map zoomed in on the highlighted star system, revealing a planet unlike anything they had ever seen. It was covered in massive structures, clearly artificial, but there was no sign of life. "This is impossible," Sarah muttered. "That planet, it's dead." But there were structures. The artifact's hum grew louder, and the symbols on its surface began to glow brighter. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room, deep, resonant, and unmistakably alien. "Prepare," it said, the same word from the Mars signal. The team froze, their hearts pounding. The voice wasn't coming from the artifact. It was in their heads, as if the artifact was speaking directly to their minds. "What does it mean?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. Marcus didn't answer. He was staring at the holographic map, his mind racing. The artifact had shown them a destination. Why? And what would they find there? The ground shook again, harder this time. A crack appeared in the wall of the facility, and icy water began to seep through. "We need to get out of here," one of the scientists shouted. "Not yet," Marcus said, his voice firm. He grabbed a data drive and began downloading everything they had. "We can't lose this. Whatever this artifact is, it's the key to understanding what's coming." As the team evacuated, the artifact's glow intensified, filling the room with blinding light. The voice spoke again, louder this time. "The danger is real. You must act." The words echoed in Marcus's mind as he ran, the data drive clutched tightly in his hand. He didn't know what the artifact was warning them about, but one thing was clear. Humanity was running out of time. The Starship Odyssey glided silently through the void of space, its sleek hull reflecting the faint light of distant stars. On board, a crew of 6 astronauts, humanity's best and brightest, prepared for the most important mission in history. Their destination, the star system highlighted by the ancient artifact. Captain Alex Rivera stood on the bridge, staring at the view screen. The star system was now visible, a cluster of planets orbiting a dim, red sun. But one planet stood out, a barren, rocky world with massive structures dotting its surface. "That's it," Alex said, her voice steady but filled with awe. "The planet from the artifact's map." Dr. Liam Carter, the mission's chief scientist, adjusted his glasses and studied the data streaming in. "The structures are definitely artificial, but there's no sign of life, no heat signatures, no energy readings. It's like they've been abandoned for centuries. Or maybe they're waiting for us," muttered engineer Mia Torres, her fingers flying over the controls. She was the youngest member of the crew, but her skills were unmatched. The tension on the bridge was palpable. They had traveled millions of miles based on a signal and a map, but no one knew what they would find. The artifact's warning echoed in their minds. "Prepare." "Let's get closer," Alex ordered. "But keep the shields up. We don't know what we're dealing with." The Odyssey descended toward the planet, its engines humming softly. As they approached, the structures came into clearer view, towering spires of black metal, arranged in intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with a faint blue light. "It's like the artifact," Liam said, his voice filled with wonder. "The same material, the same symbols. This has to be connected." "Incoming transmission," Mia shouted suddenly, her eyes wide. "It's coming from the planet." The crew froze. "A transmission?" "From a dead planet." "Put it on screen," Alex ordered, her heart pounding. The view screen flickered and a message appeared, a series of symbols that matched those on the artifact. The ship's computer began translating the message, but before it could finish, a voice crackled over the comms. "Welcome, travelers." The voice was deep and resonant, but it wasn't human. It was calm, almost soothing, but there was an edge to it, a sense of something ancient and powerful. "Who are you?" Alex asked, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her chest. "We are the keepers," the voice replied. "You have come far, but your journey is not over. The danger is greater than you know." "What danger?" Liam asked, stepping forward. "What are you warning us about?" There was a pause, as if the voice was considering its words. Then it spoke again. "The Devourer comes. It has consumed countless worlds, and now it seeks yours. You must prepare." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Devourer? It sounded like something out of a nightmare. "How do we stop it?" Alex asked, her voice firm. "The key lies within the artifact," the voice replied. "But time is short. You must act quickly." Before Alex could respond, the transmission cut off. The view screen returned to its normal view of the planet, but something had changed. The structures on the surface were now glowing brighter, and the ground beneath them was shifting. "What's happening?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Alex replied, her eyes fixed on the screen. "But I don't like it." Suddenly, the Odyssey shuddered violently. Alarms blared as the ship's systems went haywire. "We're losing power," Mia shouted, her hands flying over the controls. "Something's pulling us in." The crew scrambled to regain control, but it was no use. The ship was being dragged toward the planet as if an invisible force had taken hold of it. "Brace for impact," Alex ordered, gripping the console tightly. The Odyssey plunged toward the surface, the glowing structures growing larger and larger. Just as it seemed they would crash, the ship slowed abruptly, coming to a gentle stop in the shadow of one of the spires. The crew sat in stunned silence, their hearts racing. The ship's systems stabilized, but the sense of unease remained. "What just happened?" Liam asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think we've been invited," Alex replied, her eyes scanning the view screen. "But by who or what? I don't know." As the crew prepared to explore the surface, the voice echoed in their minds once more. "The Devourer comes. Prepare." The airlock hissed open, and Captain Alex Rivera stepped onto the surface of the alien planet, her boots crunching against the rocky ground. The rest of the crew followed, their breath visible in the cold, thin atmosphere. Above them loomed one of the massive black spires, its surface covered in the same glowing symbols as the artifact. "Stay close," Alex said, her voice calm but firm. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." The crew moved cautiously, their helmet lights cutting through the dim light. The ground was littered with strange metallic debris, and the air was filled with a faint electric hum. It felt like they were walking through a graveyard, a place frozen in time, waiting for someone to wake it up. "This place is incredible," Dr. Liam Carter whispered, his eyes wide behind his visor. He knelt to examine a piece of debris, running his gloved hand over its smooth surface. "The technology here is beyond anything we've ever seen." "Yeah, and that's what worries me," Engineer Mia Torres muttered, her eyes scanning the horizon. "If whoever built this is gone, what happened to them?" No one answered, the question hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. As they approached the base of the spire, a doorway appeared, sliding open with a soft hiss. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Guess we're expected," Alex said, gripping her weapon tightly. "Let's move." Inside, the structure was even more awe-inspiring. The walls were made of the same black metal, but they shifted and changed as the crew moved, as if the building itself was alive. The air was warmer here, and the hum grew louder, vibrating through their bones. "This way," Liam said, pointing to a corridor that glowed faintly. "I think it's leading us somewhere." The crew followed the corridor, their footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. As they walked, holographic images began to appear, scenes of ancient civilizations, some human, some alien. Cities rose and fell, stars were born and died, and through it all, a shadowy force loomed, consuming everything in its path. "The Devourer," Alex whispered, her voice filled with dread. "This is what the voice warned us about." The hologram shifted, showing a massive, shapless entity moving through space, leaving destruction in its wake. Planets were torn apart, stars were extinguished, and entire civilizations were wiped out. "It's like a plague," Mia said, her voice trembling. "How do you stop something like that?" Before anyone could answer, the corridor opened into a massive chamber. In the center stood a pedestal, and on it rested a smaller version of the artifact, a glowing, pulsating cube covered in the same symbols. "That's it," Liam said, his voice filled with awe. "The key the voice mentioned." As the crew approached the pedestal, the cube began to glow brighter, and the voice echoed through the chamber. "You've found the key," it said, its tone solemn. "But the path ahead is dangerous. The Devourer cannot be defeated by force. It must be outsmarted." "How?" Alex asked, her voice firm. "Tell us what to do." The cube projected a holographic map showing a network of star systems connected by glowing lines. One system was highlighted, a distant, uncharted region of space. The Nexus, the voice explained, a place where time and space converge. There you can trap the Devourer, but you must act quickly. It is already on its way. The crew exchanged determined glances. They had come this far. There was no turning back now. "We'll do it," Alex said, her voice steady. "But we need your help." The cube's glow intensified, and the walls of the chamber began to shift, revealing hidden compartments filled with advanced technology. "Take what you need," the voice said. "But remember, the Devourer is relentless. It will not stop until it consumes everything." As the crew gathered the technology, the ground beneath them began to shake. The holographic map flickered, and the voice spoke one last time. "The Devourer comes. Prepare." The chamber began to collapse, the walls crumbling as the crew rushed back to the corridor. They ran as fast as they could, the structure collapsing around them. "We need to get back to the ship," Alex shouted, her voice barely audible over the noise. The crew burst out of the structure just as the spire behind them collapsed, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. They sprinted toward the Odyssey, their hearts pounding. As they reached the ship, the ground shook again, and a massive shadow appeared in the sky, a shapeless, swirling mass that blotted out the stars. "The Devourer," Liam whispered, his voice filled with terror. "We need to go now," Alex ordered, her voice sharp. The crew scrambled aboard the Odyssey, and the ship's engines roared to life. As they lifted off, the shadow grew larger, consuming everything in its path. "Set course for the Nexus," Alex said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "We've got one chance to stop this thing. Let's make it count." The Odyssey shot into space, leaving the dying planet behind. But the shadow followed, relentless and unstoppable. The crew knew the truth now. The Devourer was real, and it was coming for them. The Odyssey emerged from hyperspace above a planet that looked like it had been torn apart. The surface was a jagged wasteland of cracked earth and molten rivers, with the remnants of once great cities scattered like broken toys. The sky was a swirling mass of dark clouds, lit by flashes of red lightning. "This is it," Captain Alex Rivera said, her voice grim. "The last known location of the Devourer before it disappeared." The crew stared at the view screen, their faces pale. The destruction was unimaginable. Entire continents had been ripped apart, and the atmosphere was thick with ash and debris. "How do we find something that can do this?" Engineer Mia Torres asked, her voice trembling. "We don't," Dr. Liam Carter replied, his eyes fixed on the data streaming in. "We trap it. That's what the Nexus is for." The Odyssey descended through the turbulent atmosphere, its shields straining against the violent winds. As they approached the surface, the crew spotted movement, figures running through the ruins. "There are survivors down there," Alex said, her voice filled with disbelief. "We need to help them." "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Mia asked, her eyes wide. "We don't know what we're dealing with." "We don't have a choice," Alex replied, her voice firm. "Set us down." The ship landed in a clearing near the ruins, and the crew stepped out, their weapons ready. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and decay, and the ground was littered with the remains of the planet's inhabitants. As they moved through the ruins, the figures they had seen earlier emerged from the shadows. They were humanoid but alien, their skin pale, and their eyes glowing faintly. They looked weak and desperate, but their expressions were filled with hope. "You came," one of them said, their voice raspy and weak. "We thought we were alone." "Who are you?" Alex asked, her voice gentle but cautious. "We are the last of the Krell," the alien replied. "The Devourer took everything from us. Our cities, our people, our future." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Krell story was a grim reminder of what was at stake. "We're here to stop the Devourer," Alex said, her voice steady. "But we need your help." The Krell nodded, their eyes filled with determination. "We will do what we can, but you must hurry. The Devourer is coming." As the crew followed the Krell deeper into the ruins, the ground began to shake. The sky darkened, and a low, rumbling sound filled the air. "What's happening?" Mia asked, her voice filled with panic. "It's here," one of the Krell whispered, their voice filled with terror. The crew turned to see a massive shadow forming in the sky, a shapeless, swirling mass that seemed to consume the light around it. The Devourer had arrived. "We need to move," Alex shouted, her voice sharp. The crew and the Krell ran through the ruins, the shadow growing larger and larger behind them. The ground cracked and split, and the air was filled with the sound of screams and destruction. As they reached a massive, ancient structure, the Krell stopped. "This is the Nexus," one of them said, their voice filled with urgency. "It is the only way to trap the Devourer. but you must act quickly." The crew rushed inside the structure, the Krell close behind. The interior was filled with advanced technology, much like the artifact they had found earlier. In the center of the room was a control panel covered in glowing symbols. "This is it," Lime said, his voice filled with awe. "The key to trapping the Devourer." "Then let's do it," Alex said, her voice firm. The crew worked quickly, following the instructions the Krell gave them. The control panel came to life, and the room was filled with a low, resonant hum. "It's working," Mia said, her voice filled with relief. But before they could celebrate, the ground shook violently, and the walls of the structure began to crack. The Devourer was closing in. "We need to hurry," Alex shouted, her voice filled with urgency. The crew worked frantically, their hands flying over the controls. The hum grew louder, and the air was filled with a blinding light. "It's done," Lime said, his voice filled with awe. "The Nexus is activated." The crew watched as the light enveloped the Devourer, trapping it in a swirling vortex of energy. The shadowy mass writhed and twisted, but it was no match for the power of the Nexus. "We did it," Maya whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. But as the light faded, the crew realized the truth. The Devourer was trapped, but it wasn't gone. It was still out there, waiting. "This isn't over," Alex said, her voice filled with determination. "But we bought ourselves some time." The crew and the Krell stood together, their eyes fixed on the sky. The battle was far from over, but they had taken the first step. The Odyssey touched down on Earth, its hull scorched and battered from the journey. The crew stepped out, their faces grim but determined. They had brought the Krell with them, along with the technology from the Nexus. Now, they had to convince the world of the danger they faced. The bunker was a hive of activity, filled with scientists, military personnel, and government officials. The crew was ushered into a massive conference room, where a holographic map of the galaxy was projected in the center. "This is it," Captain Alex Rivera said, her voice steady but urgent. "The Devourer is coming, and we have to be ready." The room fell silent as the crew explained what they had seen: the destruction of the Krell's planet, the power of the Nexus, and the relentless nature of the Devourer. The officials listened in stunned silence, their faces pale. "You're saying this thing is unstoppable?" one of the generals asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "Not unstoppable," Dr. Liam Carter replied, his voice firm. "But it can't be defeated by force. We have to trap it in the Nexus." "And how do we do that?" another official asked, his voice filled with skepticism. "We need to build a network of Nexus devices," engineer Mia Torres explained, her voice filled with urgency. "We have the technology, but we need to act quickly. The Devourer is already on its way." The room erupted into chaos as officials argued over the best course of action. Some wanted to focus on defense, while others believed the crew's plan was too risky. "We don't have time for this," Alex shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "The Devourer doesn't care about our politics or our borders. If we don't work together, we're all going to die." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Finally, the highest-ranking official stood, his face grim. "You have your orders," he said, his voice filled with resolve. "Do whatever it takes to stop this thing." The crew and the Krell worked around the clock, coordinating with scientists and engineers from around the world. The Nexus devices were built and deployed, each one a beacon of hope in the face of the coming storm. But as the days passed, the tension grew. The Devourer was getting closer, and the crew could feel the weight of the world on their shoulders. "We're running out of time," Mia said, her voice filled with frustration. "The Devourer will be here any day now." "We'll be ready," Alex replied, her voice steady. "We have to be." As the final Nexus device was activated, the crew gathered in the bunker's control room, their eyes fixed on the holographic map. The network was complete, but would it be enough? Suddenly, the map flickered, and a massive shadow appeared on the edge of the solar system. The Devourer had arrived. "It's here," Liam whispered, his voice filled with dread. The crew sprang into action, coordinating with teams around the world to activate the Nexus network. The air was filled with tension as the shadow grew larger, consuming everything in its path. "We're losing power," one of the technicians shouted, his voice filled with panic. "The Devourer is destructing the network. We need to stabilize it," Alex ordered, her voice sharp. "Now!" The crew worked frantically, their hands flying over the controls. The Nexus network flickered, but it held, the light growing brighter as the Devourer approached. "It's working," Mia said, her voice filled with relief. "We're trapping it." But as the light enveloped the Devourer, the ground shook violently, and the bunker systems went haywire. The holographic map flickered, and the crew realized the truth. The Devourer wasn't trapped. It was fighting back. "We need more power," Lime shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "We're losing it." The crew worked desperately, but it was no use. The Nexus network was failing, and the Devourer was breaking free. "We're out of time," Alex said, her voice filled with despair. But as the crew prepared for the worst, the Krell stepped forward, their eyes filled with determination. "There is one more option," one of them said, their voice steady, "but it will require a sacrifice." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. A sacrifice. What did that mean? Before anyone could ask, the Krell activated a hidden device, and the room was filled with a blinding light. The Nexus network stabilized, and the Devourer was trapped once more. But as the light faded, the crew realized the truth. The Krell were gone, their bodies disintegrated in the process. They sacrificed themselves, Maya whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. The crew stood in stunned silence, their hearts heavy with grief. The Krell had given their lives to save humanity, but the battle was far from over. "We need to finish this," Alex said, her voice filled with determination. "For them." The crew returned to the controls, their hands steady despite the fear in their hearts. The Devourer was trapped, but it wasn't defeated. The race against time was far from over. The Odyssey soared through the void of space, its engines roaring as it approached the edge of the Nexus network. The crew was exhausted, their faces drawn and pale, but their determination burned brighter than ever. The Devourer was trapped within the network, but it was fighting back with a fury that threatened to tear the fabric of reality apart. Captain Alex Rivera stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen. The Devourer loomed in the distance, a swirling, shapeless mass of darkness that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. The Nexus network glowed around it, a web of light struggling to contain the unimaginable force within. "We're running out of time," Dr. Liam Carter said, his voice tense. "The network can't hold it much longer." "Then we finish this now," Alex replied, her voice steady. "Mia, are the modifications ready?" Engineer Mia Torres nodded, her hands flying over the controls. "The Odyssey is equipped with the Krell's technology. We can use it to amplify the Nexus network and force the Devourer into the trap." But she hesitated, her voice trembling. "It's a one-way trip. The ship won't survive the energy surge." The crew fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. They had known this moment might come, but facing it now was harder than any of them had imagined. "We don't have a choice," Alex said, her voice filled with resolve. "If we don't do this, the Devourer will break free and Earth will be next." The crew exchanged determined glances. They had come too far to turn back now. "Let's do it," Lime said, his voice firm. "For the Krell," Mia added, her eyes filled with tears. Alex took a deep breath and activated the ship's comms. "This is Captain Alex Rivera of the Odyssey. To everyone on Earth, we can end this. No matter what happens, note that we gave everything to protect you." The Odyssey surged forward, its engines blazing as it approached the Devourer. The Nexus network flickered, the light growing dimmer as the shadowy mass writhed and twisted, fighting to break free. "Activate the amplifier," Alex ordered, her voice calm but filled with urgency. Mia pressed a series of buttons, and the Odyssey shuddered as the Krell's technology came online. A beam of light shot from the ship, connecting with the Nexus network and amplifying its power. The Devourer roared, a sound that echoed through space and time, as the light enveloped it, forcing it into the center of the network. "It's working," Lime shouted, his voice filled with awe. But the Odyssey was taking the brunt of the energy surge. Alarms blared as the ship's systems began to fail, and the hull cracked under the strain. "We're losing power," Mia shouted, her voice filled with panic. "The ship can't take much more." "Hold it together," Alex ordered, her hands gripping the console tightly. "Just a little longer." The Devourer fought back with everything it had, its shadowy tendrils lashing out at the Odyssey. The ship shook violently, and the crew was thrown to the floor. "We're not going to make it," Lime shouted, his voice filled with despair. "Yes, we are," Alex replied, her voice steady. She pulled herself to her feet and grabbed the controls. "We're finishing this. Now." With the final surge of power, the Odyssey plunged into the heart of the Nexus network, the light growing brighter and brighter until it filled the entire view screen. The Devourer let out one last, deafening roar before it was consumed by the light, trapped forever within the network. The Odyssey was gone, its sacrifice ensuring the safety of Earth and countless other worlds. underscore 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 underscore. Epilogue. On Earth, the sky cleared and the sun shone brighter than ever. The Nexus network faded, its job done. In the years that followed, the crew of the Odyssey was remembered as heroes, their bravery and sacrifice saving humanity from the brink of destruction. But in the quiet corners of the universe, the light of the Nexus still glowed, a reminder of the battle that had been fought and the price that had been paid. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Devourer waited, trapped but not defeated. The final stand was over, but the story was far from finished.